those things are true. Okay, fine, I acknowledge it, I recognize it, I get help. But when we allow fear to control our lives, we'll get ourselves stuck in a rut, and we won't move forward.
That's right. That's right.
We won't move forward. And you were going to say?
Said so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were talking about being stuck in the rut. It's going to take a fight to get out of the rut. Okay. And to what I said before, if I'm going in the wrong direction, first of all, I need to recognize that I'm in the wrong direction. Then I have to decide what am I going to do to go in the right direction.
Right.
Okay. So if you're dealing with fear, first of all, acknowledge it. You don't have to be ashamed of it, but acknowledge it, and then make some changes. You know, it says the Bible says that he which have begun a good work in us will perform it unto the day of Jesus Christ. Okay. So I can't make the change in myself, but I'm so thankful that God's got us all linked together like a chain. All right. So he's got different ones over here to be helped, got different ones. He's got specialists. He's got people that have already gone through some of the things that another person is going through to be able to tell you, you can make it. They're not words just to be said as a facade. They're real words. We can make it.
And all of us had to start somewhere.
Somewhere. That's right. And in starting somewhere, it starts with baby steps.
Exactly.
You don't get there overnight.
Right.
You know, taking one day, taking 1 minute at a time. And each minute, it adds on victory to victory to victory. And then victory will become a part of it. Right.
But again, when we tie into that fear, when we allow fear to control us, and that perception gets distorted, we can't see that.
That's right.
You know, going back to the story in the Bible about the children of Israel, all they could see was their limitations. They couldn't see anything else. And when we become so focused only on our limitations or on our negative parts of ourselves, then that's all. We can't see anything else. Right. We can't move beyond that. All I can see is that, wow, I can't do anything right. We can't see the things that we can do right because we're stuck. We're focused on just what's in front of us. And what's in front of me is my feeling, how I'm feeling now about myself, which may or may not be true.
So I'd say today, in the midst of that, from what she's saying, some of what brings in fear is murmuring and complaining. Right? And if you can come to the point, every time you take a deep breath, you have to thank God for that deep breath, because we can't make our own selves breathe. That's a start. And just, breaking the mode, that old fear mode, that old murmuring, that complaining, that looking for negative, and begin to find something, even with ourselves. We can start with this human body, of taking one thing to thank God for, and then go to the next and to the next. I can't make myself breathe. I can't make myself see. I can't make myself hear. He's given me the ability to walk. He's given me a brain to be able to tell this body to move. And just starting with the human body, and begin to thank God for those things that you have, for something we take so simple as fingers. But how much could we do without them? And begin to thank God for those little things, and that's one way. There's so many different ways, but that's one of the greatest ways.
And that's a good point, because then it takes the focus off of us and puts the focus back on where it should be.
Yes, absolutely. That's it's when we recognize that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that, well, if He made me, then He must have put something in me. But then I've got to tap in and find out what it is. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in fear.
Exactly. And that being in fear, being behind that wall, keeps us from seeing what God has placed in us. It keeps us from seeing all that we can be. Because instead of finding ways to overcome the hurdles, we'll look at the hurdle and just stop right there. Oh, well, I can't do it. Well, I can't read. Oh, well, I didn't get my diploma, or whatever it is. And then we start blaming other people for things that are not going right in our lives. Well, I would do it, but she didn't help me. I would do it, but the pastor didn't talk right to me. Or I would, whatever. It just keeps going on and on. When the reality is, it has to start with us. It has to start with the way we think. It has to start with the way we feel about ourselves and the things that we tell ourselves.
That's right. Got to get rid of the excuses.
Exactly. Okay. Next thing we have here, and going back to what we were talking about, thoughts. We have to strive for balanced thinking, a thinking that takes into account both the good and bad. And I think this is so important because a lot of times we talk about positive thinking. Well, positive thinking is really great, but positive thinking in itself may not be helpful. What's even more helpful is a balanced thinking, is one that takes into account both the good and the bad. It takes into account both the black and the white, you know, the right and the left, you know, understands that, yeah, I made a mistake, that's a fact. But then we also, it's not the end of the world.
That's right.
You know, an unbalanced thinking will say, oh gosh, everything is going wrong. Things are right, exactly. People, everybody's talking about it, and everybody doesn't even know you. Right? Things are always this way, and there are very few things that are always in everybody. You know, and everybody type of thing.
I'm having a bad day.
Right.
And when you know, we hear that, and we automatically look for it brings in the words itself brings in a negative or positive feeling. You know, I'm having a bad day. It just, you're automatically looking for gloom of this day.
Right.
I knew something else was going to go wrong. You know, expectations.
Right, because if you're thinking negative all the time, sooner or later something will happen.
That's right.
You know, just by chance, something will happen.
And it's not that things won't happen even if you don't
Right.
think that way. But if you have a different type of mindset that no matter what happens, God and I can get through this, then you can learn from that. You can build on that which has happened and still get something good out of it.
And that's it. The whole point is the perception. If my perception is that I can't do it, or my perception is that things will never go right, then it's going to be hard, like you said, to kind of get to see that, see that things are not always. You know, it's true that right now I'm having a bad time, but things are not always bad.
That's right.
Things don't always have to stay this way.
Yeah, and we spend more time magnifying negative things in our lives than we do those that are positive.
And that takes some work to overcome that, because unfortunately many of us have had more experience focusing on the negative than we do the positive thinking. You know, there are some people who are naturally more optimistic. You know, there are some people who are naturally more, you know, exactly. You know, and the thing is, we have to work on that. You know, we have to strive for balanced thinking. So like you said, when something happens, it won't be the end of the world.
So either way, it takes work.
Right.
Be it negative or positive, it takes work. But it's how productive do I want the work to be?
Right.
Right. And what do I want the productivity to be in?
Okay. Next thing that we have here. Fear can cause us to be mind readers or fortune tellers. For instance, think about this. How do you really know, and I'm talking to the audience, how do you really know that things will not work out for you tomorrow? How do you really know? Well, we don't know. What we do is we meditate on everything that went wrong in the past, and then we think, okay, things went wrong in the past, well, things are going to go wrong tomorrow. And that doesn't necessarily have to be. Tomorrow is a new day. It hasn't even gotten here yet.
That's right.
You know, we can make some changes.
If God is concerned about a little sparrow, that little bird, how much greater is He concerned about us? You know, and since He already knows the destiny for my life, nowhere have I read where He said worry about tomorrow. Okay. So it's, you know, what if I'm gonna be worried about tomorrow when I feel like I'm the one that's in control? All right. But if I recognize that it's really God that's in control, then I can trust Him to take me through the next minute even, before I even get to tomorrow.
And what I think about it like this. If the last 40, 20, 30 years of your life has not been good, okay, today is the beginning of the next 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years that you have in your life.
That's right.
You know, every day that you get up is another day for you to start the other part of your life.
That's right.
And you can make some changes. And like you said, those changes may require us making baby steps. Because if we've lived a certain way, whether it's our mindset or actual lifestyle that's been negative or that has caused negative behaviors and feelings for so long, it's going to take some time, but it's possible.
That's right.
You know, if I didn't get the job because I don't have a high school diploma, well, it may take me a while to get a high school diploma, but I can get one.
That's right.
And oftentimes people will say, you know, well, I would go back to school, but it just takes so long. Well, how long would it take? Well, it'll take about a year. Well, if you don't die, you're going to be living anyway, right? So why not go back to school? You can take one class a month.
So if I can go for a year to get this, which has taken me 20 years to decide finally this is what I want, I've already wasted these years, so why add another year on?
Right, exactly. You know, you're going to be here anyway, you know, if you're alive. So you may as well do something. You may as well be productive. It's like getting out of debt. Well, you know, if I sit here and I think about, oh gosh, I'll never get out of debt. It's just so much. And then someone says to me, well, Annette, if you start putting $5 a week aside, I'm like, $5? That's nothing. But at the end of the year, $5 might be pretty good.
That's right.
I might need that $5 every week for 52 weeks.
Start somewhere.
Right, exactly. Okay. Next thing, fear can keep us from taking risk. And when we talk about risk here, we're not talking about daredevil or negative types of things. We're talking about moving out of our comfort zone. Because sometimes we will have to move out of our comfort zone.
That's right. That's right. And every day, truth be told, our life is a risk. You know, you're talking about getting out of bed. Some folk have gotten out of bed and stumbled. You know, and I don't want to put the negative in there in that perspective, but you know, and some weren't able to get out of the bed. They laid down last night, but they didn't get up. Okay, so the mere fact that God allowed me to get up is a reason to say, okay, I'm going forward. You know, since it was His choice for me to get up this morning, then let me make the best of this day.
Exactly, exactly. And when you talk about, you know, just to piggyback on what you're saying about taking risks, sometimes to use that example about going back to school. If I'm fearful about going back to school, then me going back is a risk. Because I risk people looking at me, I risk people talking about me, I risk failure. All of those are risks, but they're necessary.
But if I can overcome those and recognize this is something I want to accomplish for me in my life, it really doesn't matter about them.
Exactly.
And if I'm sitting, and we're sitting there, and think about it, usually we're looking and wonder they're looking at me, but if that person is sitting in the same class that I'm sitting in, then evidently they're out there trying to get the same thing that I'm trying to get for their purpose, not mine. You know, but we don't look at it that way.
Right. We always see, for some of us, especially people who are battling with the fear, we see people as being here and ourselves as being here. And again, we don't realize that they had to start somewhere.
That's right.
You know, we may be just starting later, but we can still start.
That's it.
You know, we can still catch up. But when we allow fear to control our lives, a fear will tell us that you can't catch up.
And that's what that old cliche is: better late than never.
Exactly. Exactly. You know,
Yeah.
so don't allow fear to hold you back. You know, you can do it.
That's right.
It may take you longer, but you can do it.
You can do it.
And again, it will require you to take risks. And I think being a Christian, for example, God will require you at times to take some risks.
Yes.
You know, and He definitely will. And again, we're talking about risk, moving out of the comfort zone. And He will require that. And it's kind of for our benefit. It's not anything negative. It's because He knows that He put more in us than what we're actually using.
And we don't always know what's in us until we take those risks.
We become like a bloodhound. And I use that example. It's kind of, once you break that barrier, like we said before, you take that risk, and you're like, oh gosh, I did it. Then you become hungry to take another risk, to try something else. You know, okay, I couldn't drive. You drive around 10 minutes, and you're like, okay, I think I can do this again. I'm going to drive down a mile. I'm going to go, you know, an hour away. And before you know it, you're just kind of getting more hungry and hungrier because you've accomplished something.
That's right. That's right. But in the midst of all of that, they need to set some goals. You know, set some goals. And I don't mean goals that's far beyond what you feel you can reach. Start out with little goals.
Right.
And just the fact that you accomplished that little goal will make you want to well, if I can do this, maybe I can work on that.
Right.
But it's, again, the key is getting started.
Right. Because when we think about Moses, when Moses was initially called, he wanted Aaron. He wanted to rely on Aaron. But someone made a good point. You don't really read anywhere in the scripture where he actually used Aaron.
No.
You really don't. It's kind of, he wanted Aaron to go with him because he said he stuttered. And he said that he didn't feel that he could do it. But you don't really read anywhere where he actually said, okay, I can't do this. All right, Aaron, you go ahead and do it.
No, because when he crossed the Red Sea, the Lord said, Moses, what do you have?
Exactly. And that's it. Once he saw the power of God, he was like, oh shoot, he forgot all about his weaknesses. And that's it. We want people to understand that once you see what's in you, once you begin to experience what's in you, then you're like, oh wow, man, I can do this. This is doable. But fear, or allowing fear to hold us back, will keep us from seeing that. And like you were saying, taking those small steps. I may have a fear, let's say, of going outside. And there are some people listening to us who have that fear.
Yes.
And again, like you said before, if that's the type of fear that you're dealing with, there's nothing wrong with going to see someone. Again, whether it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, a counselor, to kind of deal with that, to help you get through that. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
But once you begin to, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm just going to go check my mail. That's a start. Okay, you've checked your mail, you've done that for a while. You know what? I'm going to go walk down to the end of the block. That's a start.
That's a great start.
Exactly. So the thing is, it's just a little bit at a time. Don't compare yourself. And we get into that to look at other people and what they're doing. Don't compare yourself to other people, because it's not a competition. This is about you, about me, you, right? Living our lives, to the fullest, and enjoying our lives that God has given us.
And don't count any of your victories as little teeny things that don't mean anything. They mean a great amount, not just to you, but to the Lord.
Right. Okay. Going back here, the next thing we have here, and again, allowing fear will cause us to develop false limitations. And kind of what we said before, like Moses, his fear gave him a false limitation, saying, well, I can't speak. And it sounded like he did pretty well to me throughout as you read the Bible. But that's what happens with us. You have ever heard someone say, oh, I can't sing. What's brother so-and-so, would you like to sing? Oh, I can't sing. They really can't. And I mean, I'm talking about a person who really feels this way. You have some people that just do this because they want people to say, oh, come on, come on. But I'm talking about a person who really... who really has a fear, and they say, oh, come on, you can do it, you can do it. And they're like, oh, no, I can't sing. But then they go home and they're singing in the shower. Again, fear has limited that person, because they can do it. But once they, again, see that they can for the glory of God, then they can move forward. And another point that you brought up, Missionary Kelly, selfishness. When we talk about a lot of these, whether it's a fear of failure, a fear of things in general, it's all me focused.
Yes.
And like you were saying about Thanksgiving, causes us to take our minds off of us and what we can't do, and to put it on God.
That's right. That's right.
Volunteer. You can get out and do things. Help. Be helpful in your community. All those different things will take your mind off of you and put it on on other things.
Right. That's right.
And that's so important. Okay. Next thing, how do we overcome fear? How do we overcome fear?
Foremost, I must recognize that I do have it. Because as long as I'm in denial, that's even worse.
Right.
Okay. First, as I said, I must acknowledge that yes, I do have it, and then I need to evaluate where was I? What caused me to begin to be overwhelmed with this fear in the first place?
Right.
And after doing that, okay, now what am I going to do to change it? So I'm setting some goals now. Okay.
And part of one of those goals could be getting some help.
Yes, absolutely. Pick it up before some help. Acknowledge it. Don't feel guilty and beat yourself down about it. But decide that now is a new day. and I will, from here, I am making the changes. I'm moving in a different direction. Turn from the way that you've already gone.
Right, and determined to not to give into it. If you have a fear of failure, I may have to, a fear of driving, I may have to say, come on, Miss Kelly, go with me. I'm going to drive, and I just want you to be there with me. So you want to challenge that thing that's challenging you.
Yes.
And again, like you said, you might need to get some help. You might need to see maybe a psychiatrist, psychologist, clinical social worker, or someone. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And I want to say here, when she's talking about the psychologist, clinical social work and all, it's amazing because if I need to go to the eye doctor, I'm not ashamed to go to the eye doctor. If I need to go to see the bone doctor or one of them, it's okay. I can go see them. But when we talk about going to see a therapist, a doctor, a clinical social worker, when we're dealing with mental situations and emotional situations,
we don't want to go.
Then we get embarrassed, we're overwhelmed with it. And it's just important. And most things, and I shouldn't say most, all the things that we see going on, not just in my life, in Sister Arnetta's life, but in all of our lives, they're all led by a thought. Okay?
Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors go together.
That's it, absolutely. So if I need some help to get my thoughts in order, to get my behaviors, my feelings in order, then I need to do what's necessary so that I can live a victorious life.
And the thing is, some of you may say, well, you know, I'm a faith person. I'm a person of faith. There's nothing wrong with having your faith and still going to get some help.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
The Bible says faith without works is dead.
Right. So again, the
So,
two are not in competition.
That's right.
You know, seeing
They
whether
work
it's a
together.
psychiatrist as well as reading your Bible or going to church or being a person in faith, like you said, they can work together.
That's right.
And every good and perfect gift
Come from God.
exactly anyway.
That's right.
So challenge. Another thing we can do is begin to challenge those thoughts. And again, just because a thought comes to our mind doesn't mean that it's necessarily true.
That's right.
You know, what do you mean by that? Example, I may be walking down the street and I may see you and I say, hey, how you doing, Miss Kelly? And you don't speak to me. And the first thought comes to my mind, she doesn't like me. But why doesn't she like me? Because she didn't speak to me. Now, it may be true that you didn't speak to me. It may be true that I'm thinking that she don't like me. But just because I'm having those thoughts don't mean that's the reality.
That's right.
The reality is maybe you had earphones on, you didn't hear me. Or maybe you were preoccupied with other things. So just because a thought comes to our mind doesn't mean that it's true. We have to begin to challenge thoughts. We have to begin to say, okay, where's the evidence for what I'm thinking? Okay, is this just coming from me or is this really the reality? We have to begin to do that. And I will say to our audience, are you focusing so much on your limitations that you can't move forward? Are you focusing so much on your limitations that you can't be all that God would have you to be? And if you are, you need to begin to make some changes. And if you can't do that by yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that, it's okay to seek help.
And if you tell your own self, I was designed to be a winner. I am somebody. And last thing I'd say is that God already has told us that we're precious in His sight. And anything that is precious, you take care of.
Right.
All right. So He's ready to take care of you. He just needs us to surrender our ways, our ideas to Him.
This has been It's Getting Better All the Time, Mental Health Outreach, with your hosts, Arnetta and missionary Corinne Kelly. Thank you. Have a good week and good night.